Learning a language is not as simple as learning new words for saying things, but is learning another way to think about things. Instead, it includes many tasks across all levels of language from phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and many more. During this course, I learned about first language acquisition, which starts with input, where babies are helped in their language acquisition by adults in home environment by simplifying words, which lead to child-centered speech. From vocalization, babbling, first words, that's the one first stage, phrases, sentences, two-word phrases, storytelling, ultimately to a stage where his grammar is almost like an adult. I learned about the different approaches to the study of FLA, from Chomsky's innatism to Lenenberg's critical period hypothesis to Skinner's behaviorism, to a point where interactionists focused on linguistic environment where parents were essential. Behaviorists argue that kids do better when positively reinforced and do not make error as if it is not a part of learning process, whereas Chomsky proposed children are biologically programmed to acquire language through language acquisition device, which later becomes the universal grammar box. On the other hand, Lenenberg came up with the critical period hypothesis that supports the idea that LAD works on right time and only at the right place. The central theme in SLA research is that of an interlanguage, the idea that the learners use is not simply the result of difference between the language that they already know and the language that they are learning, that is, a completely language system in its own right and a systematic rules. This interlanguage gradually develops as the learners are exposed to target language. So, in order to learn the second language, a child needs to undergo the stages of cooing, babbling, the one-word stage, the two-word stage, and the telegraphic speech until he have a language just like adults. So, while they are learning their second language, there could be barriers in the process, such as insufficient focus on the process, insufficient incentive, the critical period has passed, or affective factors such as self-consciousness that inhibits the learning process. During this program, I learned that SLA was based on 6 general principles: that language is functional, language varies, language learning is cultural learning, it is a long-term process, and it occurs through meaningful use and interaction, and it develops independently. Learning theories are very persistent. These theories have done much to influence the way people teach, create course curriculum, and explain things to their children. I learned about how behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, humanism, and experiential learning affect second language acquisition. From fossilization, I learned how incorrect language becomes habit for learner and cannot easily be corrected. I recognize the responsibility of the ESL teacher to motivate students to try new things and not to be afraid to make mistakes. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis had 2 versions. The stronger version emphasized that language determines the thought, and the weak version talked about how linguistic categories and usage influence thought and creates non-linguistic behavior. The zone of proximal development theory came under the social culture theory and focused on how scaffolding, social interaction, and more knowledgeable other help language learner grow. The critical period hypothesis theory helped me to understand the importance of motivation when having students from different age groups in a similar classroom. The Sapir-Whorf theory added to my understanding of an ESL teacher that we must be sensitive and respectful to the perspective of students free from any sort of judgment, as dissimilar views are nothing but a product of perception based on different languages. Fossilization theory taught me to be aware of my own mistakes in my language and try to correct them in front of the class, to make students comfortable to try new things and not be afraid to make mistakes. By ZPT, I learned how we can begin guiding students through the steps necessary to learn a concept. I learned how important it is to make connections between learners' prior knowledge of a task with the new task that is being learned. As a future ESL teacher, I learned to work upon the communicative competence of my students. I could do that by working on the grammatical, sociolinguistic, and strategical competence of students by teaching grammatical system, syntax, and vocabulary to my class. As Karshan points out that language acquisition is a subconscious process, while it is happening, we are not aware it is happening, and the competence developed this way is stored in the brain subconsciously. We as ESL teachers should work on achieving communicative competency of our students by having a positive attitude in a class and by always be willing to create real-life language skills for our students. Thank you, Frank, for enlightening me with your expertise and wisdom on this subject and making me capable of doing this Pecha Kucha today. Thank you. Thank you again.